Angel Antonio Torres was born to Narciso and Ramona and was nicknamed Tony. He was a great athlete and was described as kind, social, and very well liked. He graduated from Freiburg Academy, where he played soccer and basketball. In 1999, 21-year-old Tony was a student at Framingham State University, majoring in business and psychology and minoring in Spanish. He had also just moved into an apartment in Barre, Massachusetts with his girlfriend. He would spend Mother's Day weekend with his family and then leave on May 9, 1999. This would be the last time she would ever see her son. Tony was last seen on South Street in Biddeford, Maine at 2 a.m. on May 21, 1999, and any details after this are unclear. He and a friend, Jason Carney, were visiting friends in Biddeford and in the nearby towns of Saco and Old Orchard Beach. The night Tony disappeared, his friend Jason said the two of them were at a friend's apartment and went out to meet some customers who were unhappy with the quality of drugs they had bought. Strangely, Jason would later return to the apartment alone and very upset. He said he had walked with Tony to the Whistle Stop, a nearby convenience store, at around 2 a.m. He claimed Tony was looking for a ride to either North Conway, New Hampshire, or back home, and said a man in a red truck was going to drive him. When Jason was questioned by investigators, he would say the drug deal went bad and the people to whom they were selling the drugs were unhappy, but he never elaborated on what actually happened. A Maine State Police lieutenant would describe Jason as an individual with a questionable past and a person who had little integrity and had a lack of credibility. They also felt that Jason never provided accurate information on what actually happened to Tony. Tony's family would report him missing on May 24th after his girlfriend notified them that he had failed to show up for work. Stephen and Daniel Sanborn were the last people known to have seen Tony, and they were also the last people to see 15-year-old Ashley Ouellette, who was killed in Scarborough, Maine in February 1999, a few months before Tony disappeared. The Sanborn brothers attended high school with Ashley, and Stephen had dated her briefly. She was at their home the night she was killed and was found in the middle of a road, 10 miles from their home, and had been strangled to death. Stephen and Daniel are considered possible suspects in her murder, but have never been charged. Tony told his parents he knew who killed Ashley, and his dad told him to either go to the police or keep his mouth shut about it. This is where the theory comes from that Tony was murdered because of his knowledge about Ashley's death, but that theory has never been fully verified and her murder still remains unsolved. Another theory is that Tony's disappearance was drug-related. Investigators believe Jason was involved in Tony's disappearance and he may not have been truthful about the drug deal. Jason moved to Rhode Island sometime after Tony went missing and then died of a suspected drug overdose in 2015 at the age of 36. Investigators have been in contact with Jason's relatives and a former girlfriend since his death and believe he was involved in Tony's disappearance. Ramona and Narciso Torres just want to give their son a proper burial, and with the help of donations from area businesses, they're increasing the reward for information to $16,500. His mother stated that they just want someone to come forward and say where his remains are. The parents say they think about their son every day and hope for some kind of justice, but as of today, this case remains unsolved. Kimberly Ann Moreau was born January 21, 1969. She lived in Jay, Maine, and went by the nickname Kim. She was in gymnastics and cheerleading at Jay High School. On May 10, 1986, 17-year-old Kim had plans to attend her high school's junior prom, but changed her mind at the last minute after she had an argument with her boyfriend, Mike Staples, because he had cheated on her with her friend. Instead, she went out with her friend Rhonda Breton, Rhonda's 25-year-old boyfriend Darren Jodry, and his 25-year-old friend Brian Inman. She stopped by her house on Jewel Street at around midnight, used the bathroom, and told her sister that she would be back in an hour, leaving her purse and all her belongings behind. Their parents were across the street from the home at the VFW at the time. Darren had gotten a new 1986 Trans Am, and Kim was then seen getting into it and has never been seen again. Apparently, Kim, her friend Rhonda, and the two men had spent the day riding around in the new car. Although it was Darren's car, he was clocked in at work that night from 10 p.m. until 6 the next morning, so Brian most likely was the one driving the car at the time. Darren being at work has not been verified because co-workers were known for clocking each other in and out. It is believed that Brian and Rhonda were in the car when Kim left again with them around midnight. Brian later stated that he dropped her off a few hours later, stating that Kim requested to be let out of the car half a mile from her home. She allegedly claimed she wanted to be alone and walked the remaining distance to her house because she was still upset about the argument she had with her boyfriend days before. Her family does not believe his story though, stating that she was terrified of the dark and the area was pitch black at the time. Her family said it was several months before police showed any interest at all in her disappearance and initially labeled her as a runaway. Kim's father says he has maintained contact with Brian over the years since Kim's disappearance in hopes of finding out what happened to his daughter. At one point, Brian told Kim's father that the two had consensual sex the night Kim went missing. He also admitted to drinking alcohol and doing cocaine with another man that night. Kim's family believes she may have experimented with drugs to try and fit in, and some pills were found in the purse that she had left at the home that night. One of Kim's sisters speculates she died accidentally on the night of her disappearance, and the people she was with covered it up. Her father also believes she died within hours of leaving home. Another person of interest is Calvin Tidwell. He was at the party the night Kim went missing and was allegedly heavy into drug deals, especially supplying the teens with them at the time in return for favors. The class ring that Kim kept on her necklace that belonged to her boyfriend Mike, with his name inscribed on it, was later discovered to be in Calvin's mother's cupboard. He later admitted while in prison for an unrelated crime to having the ring, stating it was traded for a bottle of alcohol, but denied having anything to do with her disappearance. In 2015, dozens of police searched a 5-acre property around the mobile home belonging to Brian, hoping to find evidence in her disappearance, but the search turned up nothing. In 2019, police excavated a concrete slab at a property in Livermore related to Calvin, a spot where Kim had been rumored to be buried for over 30 years, but again found nothing. They also searched 2 gold mines in Livermore with permission of the landowner. But prior to completing the search, the landowner called it off and the search was never completed. The statements given by Rhonda, Darren, and Brian have changed many times over the years, especially from her friend Rhonda. She had told investigators that she was not close friends with Kim, despite there being many letters the girls had written back and forth, and they had spent a lot of time together for several months. Rhonda later died in 2009 by a hit-and-run driver in another state. The Trans Am they were riding in that night was not searched for 17 years. Kim's mother, Pat, died of cancer in 1988, but her father still lives at the same home they occupied in 1986. Foul play is suspected in her case, and police stated they have identified 2 prime suspects, but never publicly released the names. She was declared legally dead in 1993. For the past 35 years, her father Richard has plastered the town's telephone poles with her photo, hoping desperately for any information on the case. He states that he will never give up on finding his daughter, and as of today, this case remains unsolved. Robert Joyel was born January 13, 1980, and was nicknamed Rob. He was described as a goofball that loved to make people smile. He enjoyed football and horseback riding in Cape Cod where he was born. Around his sophomore year of high school, his grades began to slip, and so his coaches removed him from the football team and told him to get his grades up. Football had been incredibly important in his life, and without it, he began to struggle to find purpose. That's when he found himself getting into more and more trouble. At some point during all of this, his family decided to move away from the large city of Houston, Texas, to the more isolated town of Gorham, Maine. Rob would go from a very large school in Houston to a much smaller school in Gorham with very cliquish groups. With Rob being 18 and only having a couple months left of high school, he would get in an apartment on April 3, 1998 in Portland, Maine with his friend Andre. That same day, he would go with his father to buy a Ford Bronco that he found. Earlier that day, Rob played basketball with his younger brother Mark for a few hours. His mom bought several bags of groceries for Rob, and when he drove away that day, nobody knew that his first night of freedom would actually be his last. He never even got to spend one night in his new apartment. That night, Rob dropped off his car and belongings at his new apartment and went out with his friends to the Metropolis Dance Club on Forest Avenue in Portland, a popular under-21 club. While at the club, his friend Michael got into an argument with another group of young men. It was bad enough that his girlfriend Monique suggested that they needed to leave as she had heard the other group was looking to fight. Rob and his friends hopped into a van and drove to the 24-hour Denny's on Congress Street where the crowds always went to after the club closed. When Rob and Michael and the rest of their group made it to Denny's around 1 a.m., they found 3 cars of guys waiting for them in the parking lot. While Rob and the others waited in the van, his friend Michael got out of the vehicle and was met by a guy named PT. Suddenly, someone from behind PT lunged forward and punched Michael, who dropped to the ground and slid under the van. Rob and the other passengers got out of the vehicle to help, only to find themselves surrounded by dozens of people. Rob ended up fighting with an 18-year-old professed gang member named Kevin Janasco. Rob and his other friends got pulled apart, and they were all engaged in their own isolated fights in the parking lot. Most of Rob's friends scattered, some even ran away from the scene, but Rob was left trying to fight off several people. Sometime during the commotion, Rob's shirt was pulled up over his head, and then he was stabbed. When the sound of police could be heard, the crowd dispersed, leaving Rob lying on the ground bleeding to death. By the time police arrived, he had lost way too much blood and was pronounced dead at the scene. Although nearly 100 people scattered, there was still about 50 people nearby, but no one came forward as an eyewitness to who stabbed and killed him. The initial police investigation included interviews of about 60 people, and they were able to piece together some of the details of the evening, but details were still murky. The police discovered that the rival group was either affiliated with or full-fledged members of the Southeast Asian and Cambodian gang called the Tiny Rascals. An investigation revealed that in the first car, a red Mustang, was 15-year-old Seha Sray, Sam Kim, Tana Ork, and Seha's brother. In the second car, a blue compact, was PT, Kevin Janasco, and at least 3 other people. And finally, a dark Toyota car with a Massachusetts plates was driven by Sam Kim's brother and had 3 guys with him from Boston, and the vehicle they were driving had weapons in its trunk. The knife that killed Rob was left behind in the parking lot, and fingerprints were pulled from it, but investigators could not definitively link them to anyone. That same night, PT, along with Kevin Janasco, who fled the scene in PT's car, was taken into custody for questioning. Rob's blood was all over PT's jacket, but they were both released the following day. The other cars with the Kim brothers, Seha Sray, the men from Boston, and Tana Ork fled the scene and hid in one of the brothers' apartments. Within 2 days of Rob's murder, a suspect started to emerge. A 15-year-old girl came to the Portland police station with her parents to talk to them about a phone call she received after Rob's death. She said that she was talking to 15-year-old Seha Sray, and he confessed to her over the phone that he had stabbed Rob after somebody used racial slurs against him and his friends. Seha initially told police that he wasn't even at Denny's that night. However, another witness, one of Seha's friends, came forward and said that Seha asked him to be his alibi to back up the lie he told police. At age 15, Seha was charged with the murder and spent 18 months behind bars. But he was released after investigators felt there wasn't enough evidence for a conviction. Several years later, Seha was shot and killed in a dispute over drug money. Rob's brother Mark claims he and the police heard several credible accounts that indicate Seha was not the killer and he likely took the fall for someone else. Rob's family is asking witnesses to come forward and finally tell the truth about what happened the night Rob died, but as of today, this case remains unsolved. On December 7, 1985, Armand and Lorraine Peltier let their Siberian husky named Paka outside their home in Frenchville, Maine, right across the river from Canada. At some point in the early morning hours, a woman delivered a full-term baby girl on a gravel pit access road near the intersection of U.S. Route 1 and Peltier Avenue in Frenchville, and then drove or was driven away, leaving the infant behind as temperatures were well below zero. Mr. Peltier said that not long after letting their dog out, she came back and kept pounding at the door's window to get back in. He said he went to go look and could not believe what he saw. He would say he thought it was a rag doll at first, but then he realized it was actually a newborn baby. Mrs. Peltier remembers a cute little girl with reddish blonde hair that they were later told weighed 6 pounds 8 ounces. The baby had very recently died and still had the umbilical cord attached, although police did not know if the baby was born alive. When authorities arrived on the scene, they found a large amount of blood, placenta, and boot prints. An autopsy was performed and the cause of death was listed as exposure. It was 30 degrees below zero the night before, and officials said she could not have lived more than 30 minutes in that temperature. The Peltiers believed the cries of the infant or its scent led Packa right to her, and said Packa carried her so carefully by her head right to our back steps. In 1985, investigators told the Peltiers that any wounds caused by Packa in no way contributed to the baby's death. Sheriff James Midori said there were some wounds in her head, but they were completely superficial, and he noted the dog did nothing to hurt the little baby. An officer at the scene said a vehicle must have driven in because of the tracks found in the snow. He also said there was frozen blood found in the snow along with footprints, and near those were the dog tracks. He said he turned and followed the dog's tracks right to the house where it had dropped the baby by the door. The gravel pit was not far off the road, and so the baby must have been abandoned in the middle of the night, or as the officer noted, the person would have been in plain view. The vehicle was determined to be small in size, and the mother of the baby was suspected to be from Canada. The media were telling people to be on the lookout for people shopping for items that could be used to control heavy bleeding. Police questioned a couple who had been spotted in a local department store around the time of the incident. The woman reportedly had blood on her pants and was acting distressed. Police immediately released a composite sketch of the couple to the media. The couple were Canadian and came forward and explained that she had gotten her period and were quickly ruled out as the suspects. Other than a description of a small car based on tire tracks found at the scene, police have very little evidence and the trail went cold. The Peltiers said they could never have children and would have loved to adopt the baby Jane Doe if she had survived. They were very saddened that the mother had left the baby in the snow instead of leaving her on their doorstep. The Peltiers moved to Bangor in the summer of 1986, and Packa lived to be 12 years old before dying of cancer in 1987. This baby is known in the Doe Network and NamUs as Aroostook County Baby Jane Doe, but no composite sketch of the baby exists. The case remains open and is still under investigation, and as of today, remains unsolved. Ayla Bell Reynolds was born April 4, 2010, to Trista Reynolds and Justin DePietro. On the night of December 16, 2011, Ayla was with her father at his home at 29 Violet Avenue in Waterville, Maine. He lived with his mother, his sister, and his sister's infant daughter. But that night, Justin's mother wasn't home, and his girlfriend Courtney Roberts and her son were staying over. Justin would put 20-month-old Ayla to bed at 8 p.m. This was the last time she was ever seen again. The night she went missing, there were 3 adults in the small home: Justin, his sister, and his girlfriend. Justin called the police at 8:50 the next morning to report her missing. Investigators found Ayla's blood in multiple places in the DePietro's home, including her first-floor bedroom and his basement bedroom, which is where he slept that night with his girlfriend and her child. His sister and his sister's child slept on the first floor. In late fall 2011, Ayla's mother, Trista, decided voluntarily to enter treatment for substance abuse. Before entering the rehab program, Trista arranged for her sister to take care of Ayla with the help of Trista's mother. But Justin's family contacted DHS and claimed that Ayla was supposed to be in his care, though there was never a formal custody arrangement. Without a home visit, Ayla was removed from her aunt and grandmother's care and instead placed in Justin's home that he shared with his mother and sister. A home visit would have been standard procedure, but this crucial step was skipped according to Trista and her family. The representative from DHS who placed Ayla in the DePietro home was a woman named Karen who was related to Justin's mother, Phoebe. Trista had reasons for keeping Ayla out of the DePietro house. She felt that Ayla wasn't safe there. Although the pair had been voluntarily co-parenting Ayla, she started coming home to Trista with unexplained bruises. When Trista asked what happened, Justin said there was an incident in the ball pit at Chuck E. Cheese, but Trista knew Chuck E. Cheese didn't have a ball pit. One time, Ayla's arm was broken while in Justin's care. He claimed she sustained the injury when he was carrying her into the house, and his arm slipped, causing him to fall on top of her. Justin never sought medical treatment for Ayla's injury, and later she had to be placed in a soft cast to heal. Knowing her daughter was in Justin's home, Trista checked herself out of the treatment program and tried to get Ayla back, but the DePietro family refused. When she called to speak to Ayla on the phone, Justin and his family made excuses as to why she was unavailable at the moment. Trista stated that she received text messages from him stating that she would never get Ayla back. Trista filed for full custody of Ayla on December 15th, and Justin called to report her missing the morning of December 17th. In April 2012, police found some unspecified items of interest behind the Hathaway Creative Center in the Kennebec River, about a mile from the DePietro's home. In May 2012, nearly 6 months after Ayla vanished, authorities publicly stated they believed she was dead, but did not believe she had been abducted. Investigators found several drops of Ayla's blood on her car seat strap in Justin's vehicle, and her dried vomit was found on the back seat. Drops of her blood were also found on her slippers, the sofa, her baby doll, a fan cord, a plastic tote in the basement, and also on a sheet found inside the tote, on Justin's sneakers, his mattress and sheets, the cement floor and wall beside his bed, and a pallet in the basement. When investigators showed him the blood, he had no reaction. He also told Trista that it was no big deal. He said he had no idea what happened that night, and she must have been abducted, and stated it was just a normal night. Strangely, he also took out a life insurance policy on Ayla weeks before she disappeared. In December 2018, 7 years after her disappearance, Trista filed a wrongful death suit against Justin. Although the suit seeks unspecified monetary damages, she stated the real goal of it was to get answers as to what happened to Ayla and to recover her body. In his response to Trista's filing, Justin said he was innocent of any wrongdoing in Ayla's disappearance, and the blood in his house was from one time when she was sick. Authorities maintain that he has not been cooperative with the investigation, and they believe the adults who were in the home that night are withholding information. Surprisingly, no one has been named as a suspect in Ayla's disappearance, and she remains missing and her case remains unsolved.